Chargers. Touchdown, UCLA.
With USC great and NFL stud, Frosty Rucker.
The Trojans back in front.
And LAFB founder Ryan Dyrud on the Believe Podcast Network and LAFBnetwork.com. This is your destination for Los Angeles football.
What's going on, Los Angeles? Welcome into the LA Football Show here on the LAFB Network, and always on Fridays, live at 5, drive time on the mightier 1090 ESPN Radio. Thank you for making us a part of your day. I'm your host, Ryan Dyrud, and joined by always a special guest, part of the LA Football Network, host of Chargers Unleashed, one of the best dudes in the business, great friend of mine, soon to be dad, Dan Wolkenstein. What's up, my man? How you doing?
Ryan, thank you for the intro. You're too kind. I'm good. How are you doing? Happy Friday to you and everyone out there.
Yes, happy Friday. I don't know how it is by you, but it's a colder, cloudier day here in LA, as it's been hot all week. So it's nice to throw on a hoodie again.
It's a little balmy here in Southern California, trying our best to be like the folks over in Indy at the Combine. But yeah, I got a hoodie on today. Like, I'm feeling like I'm ready for some s'mores, maybe some hot totties. I don't know. We'll see how this weekend goes.
Yeah, I don't know what the heck happened beginning of the week when it was like 90 degrees. I took my daughter for a walk, and it was February still, or beginning of March, whatever. And I'm like, all right, we're gonna go to the park, throw on the jeans, have like a flannel on, and dying, just pouring sweat going through these neighborhoods. It was unbelievable. I'm like, what is going on here?
Yeah. Not to make myself sound super popular, but I was playing pickleball. All the cool kids are doing it now, and yeah, I was not expecting to be dripping sweat in the middle of March or the beginning of March. Just
I'm glad you brought that up, because we can get into that for a second. For those out there that don't know, because pickleball is huge right now, explain to everyone what pickleball is and how you got into it.
Okay, so pickleball is, imagine tennis and paddleball kind of hybrid merged into one. So imagine a tennis court divided by 4, and then that is each one of those quarters is going to be a pickleball court. There's a net in between, and you have partners.
Small court.
Small court, yep. Not as much moving as tennis, but imagine it being like tennis, but with a wiffle ball and wooden or I don't know, ceramic, I don't know the material, paddles, and the balls are going still pretty quickly, but they don't go as far. Still a great workout. Super fun, super social sport. One of the sports that actually, I think, got really popular because of COVID, and a lot of people wanted to play it to go outside. But I got into it because I think literally there's a park that's like less than a mile from my house. And I think we went by and I saw people playing it, and my parents actually were playing it. And they came over one time, we ended up playing, and honestly, I got addicted, and I've been playing ever since.
So it's kind of like a large outdoor ping pong almost.
Yes, totally. Yeah, but
it
gets competitive. People start slamming them, but there's also finesse involved where you have to, they call it dinking, where you want to get it right over the net. But
little backspin, little top spin.
Oh yeah, it gets wild.
Is it like normal rules where you can let it bounce once, or is it like no bounces?
No, it depends on, there's some specific rules, but for the most part, yes, it can bounce or not bounce.
Okay. But one bounce is the max.
One bounce, it cannot bounce. Correct.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm looking for a league. So anyone out there listening, that if you know of a league in or around Pasadena area, I'm trying to join. I got to get on Dan's level before
you got to do. I'm telling you, you play once and you're hooked. It's actually one of the games that you can play and get competent at pretty quickly.
Yeah. Because my wife and I are looking at joining like a bowling league just to do something on weeknights. But I could use a little more exercise than bowling. I'm just going to go and get hammered anyway and drink a bunch of beer.
I will say bowling,
I move around.
I used to be in a bowling league when I was.
Of course you were. Of course you were. What was your team name? You got to have a creative team name.
I honestly don't remember the team name. I think I was maybe 13, 15. I don't remember what it was.
Okay. You were in a bowling league when you were 13?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. You were a cool kid.
But it was like me and like my parents. So like that's how cool I was.
Cool kid, Wolkenstein.
Yep.
All right. Well, anyone out there, let me know. I'm trying to join a league. But we got a great show for you today. We're talking NFL Combine is in full swing. Day one wrapped up yesterday's with quarterbacks, tight ends, and receivers. We got offensive linemen and running backs going on right now, D-line and linebackers tomorrow, and DBs and special teamers on Sunday. So we are going to kind of just mostly recap what went on Thursday with the skill positions, and we're going to touch on quarterbacks very briefly, but I mean, it doesn't apply to the Rams or Chargers since, they won't be taking any of those guys, and there's no UCLA Bruins or USC quarterbacks that participated. So, but we mainly are going to probably dive into receivers because those are guys that are really going to get a good look by both these teams. Before we get into it quick, though, got to tell you again about our LAFB betting partners we join with. Got a link in the description below. If you're listening on radio, just head to LAFBnetwork.com. In the top menu, you'll see LAFB betting offer tab. You can go check that out. We've partnered with BetUS out here in California, have great deals for you, 125% welcome bonus. They're going to, basically double your money there. They got a 200% crypto bonus if you want to deposit with crypto. So a lot of good deals there. Dan, are you a big, I know this is football, but are you a big March Madness fan?
I used to be. I've kind of fallen off the map when it comes to it. I need to get back to it, but the last 2 or 3 years, I just kind of lost it. I don't know why. I mean,
No,
I'll blame
we're
COVID.
busy. We're busy. Yeah, that too. It didn't happen 2 years ago. So, but March Madness is coming up, which is one of the biggest betting couple weeks in the year. So make sure if you want to get on that, head to BetUS. Again, use our link below to get those sign up offers. And yeah, UCLA and USC should both have squads in the dance. We'll see how far they go. UCLA went to the Final Four last year. We'll see if they can repeat that dominance. So, I'm going to throw some money on our LA boys for sure. You should too.
Let's do it. I will say, fun fact, I was at a Elite 8 Final Four, or 2016 Elite 8 back in the day in DC.
Yeah.
Tons of fun. If anybody is in an area where you can go to one, they're a riot.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Since we're doing story time, whatever, it's Friday. We can do a little drive time, story time before we get into combine stuff. So when I was sophomore or junior in high school, somewhere in that middle years of high school, went on a trip. It was right after Hurricane Katrina hit. And so we went on a trip, probably 20 of us with 2 caravans driving down to Mississippi to do some, help with, rebuilding and cleaning and, just help out some of the efforts down there. We actually went to Boonville, Mississippi, which was northern Mississippi. So it wasn't actually hit necessarily by the hurricane, but economically it was affected. So we went down there to help some of the churches down there. So we're driving through St. Louis. And again, bunch of high school kids had been in a van now for 20 hours or whatnot. And there's just tons of people. There's signs. This is when I think it was the Dow Jones Center was the arena there where the St. Louis Rams were at the time. And so we just stop randomly. I'm amazed our leaders let us do this. Stopped out of the car. We asked the people what's going on? They're like, oh, it's the Elite Eight's here. Right now it's Oregon and Florida facing off. So we went and found this guy on the corner, bought 20 tickets from him. Here we are like a little missions group, bought 20 tickets and go and watch the Oregon-Florida game. It was back when Joakim Noah and Corey Brewer were on the Florida team. Dylan Brooks was on that Oregon team, sat 17 rows up in the Dow Jones Center and watched some Elite Eight basketball. It was great. One of those great memories that happened out of nowhere.
There isn't a sporting event that I wouldn't go to. There really isn't.
Yeah. Pickleball tournament. I'll be there in the crowd cheering on.
Let's go.
So, anyway, that was my random story. So, all right, Dan, combine. I'm still have mad FOMO because we should be live from the combine right now doing this interview. We were supposed to be there. Obviously, stuff happened. Nothing bad, but just weren't able to make it. But I'm still bummed, man. We should be there right now. We should be in Indy.
I was watching everyone sit there at Lucas Oil Stadium. I'm like, man, we should be there. I'd be over there getting drinks with whoever and watching all these guys blaze 40 times and verts and broad jumps and all that. Next year we'll be able to actually get logistics in order to where we can make it happen. Just life got in the way of a lot of us.
yeah, it'll happen next year. Do you think there's been talks with them moving cities, kind of like how they do the draft? I think it should stay in Indy. What's your thoughts on that?
I've heard that. I don't know why. I mean, I guess I don't know why it wouldn't move. I like the nostalgia of it being in Indy every year. I get that, but also there's zero reason why it couldn't be in literally any stadium in the country.
Yeah. No, yeah, just like the draft, it has become kind of now they allow fans to come in, like even in Indy, there was fans in the lower bowls, so and they've made it more of an entertainment production. I just think there's something cool about, that's what it's known for, the combine in Indy, and like the draft used to be New York, so I get moving it, but seeing all it's like there was an article that came out, I think 2 or 3 years ago on ESPN about kind of the media side of the combine, how it's just like the who's who going to steakhouses, you're going to St. Elmo Steakhouse, you're going to all these different places that Indy's known for. And, everyone is boozing heavy and hanging out. And it's just like a big, like, networking event. Like, yeah, you're there to watch the combine, but it's more so about networking. And something about it being an Indy has that appeal because everyone knows the spots to go to. Not saying they wouldn't, if it moves to Nashville in 2 years, people aren't going to know where to go in Nashville. But I don't know. I kind of like the nostalgia of having an Indy. Not that I've ever been.
I mean, I wouldn't mind going to Indy every year. I'll put it that way. But like from a business perspective, I can understand why if the NFL wants to kind of capitalize on the ability to have that many fans from all over the country go to different places, like I get it. I mean, if you're trying to just advance the brand, the NFL Combine is getting bigger and bigger. It's now become like a full week festivity and it's live all day. Like that used to never happen.
No. Well, it's funny too that I noticed about the combine is so most of the media gets there on like Monday and the actual first drills don't even start till Thursday. And most of the media leaves by Thursday or Friday. Like they're there based. I mean, obviously the initial interviews are on Tuesday with the coaches, the GM, Tuesday, Wednesday. But once the actual drills start, it's like then you can just watch it on TV. Like you don't have to be there. The benefit is in the beginning when you can network with everyone and then do the interviews. So I thought that was kind of funny too.
Exactly. And I was thinking about that too. Like once the actual workouts commenced, I was like, there's really no benefit to being there in person.
No.
Other than just seeing, wow, he looks fast in person. But like he looks fast on tape too. Like
yeah, exactly. Yeah, the benefit is being on that radio row, which is where we should have been. But Dan Wolkenstein, let's talk some receivers because I think the Chargers have very interesting decision making to do in free agency, which I've talked about a ton on my show. And we don't need to get too much into that, but obviously at that 17th pick, if they decide to go receiver or wait till later, the Rams obviously don't pick till the 3rd round, but this is a deep receiver class where they can get some great talent. The Rams have that big question of if they're going to bring back OBJ, but even if they do, he's not going to be available till November with the ACL tear. So they may still want to add some depth at receiver in those later rounds. They do still have 8 picks, which is crazy. People are like, Rams have no picks. They got 8 picks still, just no 1st or 2nd rounder. So receivers, before we get kind of deep into it, and you and Jake Hefner, who do the great Chargers Unleashed show, you guys went deep dive into receivers on your show just last night. So for everyone out there listening, make sure to check out that if you want a real more deep, but we'll get somewhat deep. But before we get into it, just what were some like takeaways from the receiver drills yesterday that you were like, oh, wow.
Yeah. Takeaways, big ones. One, you're right. This receiving class is arguably the deepest I've ever seen.
Which I feel like we've said the last like 2 years, which is crazy.
And it's been said every year, just like they said that like Justin Jefferson's never gonna get his record broken. Jamar Chase does it the next year. Same thing here.
Like literally, Dan, sorry to cut you off again. I do this a lot when you come on, so I apologize. But literally 2 years ago, think about it. 2 years ago was CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson,
Jerry
Jeudy, Henry Ruggs. Those were the big names in the first round. Then last year, Jamar Chase. I'm like, why am I drawing a blank? But there's a lot of big names last year too. And then now we get to this year where there could be 4 or 5 going in the first round again. Continue.
Yep. And I will say, I think this year, I don't necessarily know if it has as much of like the elite tier of wide receivers, but going for like a very good wide receiver and like the sheer volume of quantity that you can choose from, you have it all. And the one thing, big picture that this class has specifically that other classes have not had as much of, this class is just fast. I think there's a record of wide receivers with 4.3 times this year of any NFL combine. If you want someone fast, if you want someone elusive, if you want someone big, you have your pick of the litter. It just depends on what your flavor is. And for teams like the Rams who don't have a pick in the first 2 rounds, you can still get a absolute stud in round 3 in this receiving core, just because it's so deep. It's so deep. And you saw guys who are probably going to be day 3 guys who are running 4.2s, which is bananas.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty quick. It's pretty fast. And, let me ask you this real quick before we get into actual like specific players, but I thought it was funny that this was the first year. I don't know how big of a storyline this was, but so Charlie Casserly, former GM of and then has been with NFL Network, has been the guy on the hand times for the combine for a long, long time. And this is the first year it wasn't him. It was someone else took over. And we noticed when the official times came out, there was pretty big discrepancy. I mean, Chris Olave, I think, ran a 4.21 unofficial and then a 4.39. Like, that's a pretty massive discrepancy. What was your thoughts on that? That the hoopla that gets created, and then the official. And let me say this too: 4.39 is still unbelievably blazing fast. But
Yes.
I just thought that's a pretty big discrepancy.
Yes, well, I think it kind of got a little concerning for me when I saw that many guys running 4.2s, because that is not normal. And so when you see that many guys running 4.2s or like 4.31, 4.32, something seemed a little off, because that just like that we've never seen anything like that. Now, it normally those unofficial times aren't that drastically different from the official times. Unfortunately, we saw some drastic differences yesterday, which kind of made it difficult. I kind of felt bad for some of those receivers. Like, I felt bad for Olave, I felt bad for Watson, in the sense that they ran that 4.2 quote unquote time unofficially, and they're like, why would I need to run it again? I'm done. And turns out they actually did run the 4.2, and then they didn't have a second chance to run it. So we'll probably see them going for it on the pro days. But look at the receiving class as a whole. Like, we talk about speed. I think there's also like a lot of versatility in this class. There's also guys that just blow the roof off when it comes to like measurables or testing, whether it's the broad jump, whether it's the 40 time, whether it's the vertical. And there are some guys who just seem like they're unicorns, like ones who probably made millions yesterday just on their testing alone. You look at a guy like Christian Watson, who balled out. He had a ridiculous broad jump. His hands are insane. He ran a 4.34, I believe, officially, something like that.
4.36. Yeah.
Calvin Austin, probably going to be a day 2 pick, who's going to be someone that one of the fastest guys. He's like a full-time track athlete, where he won like 9 championships when he was in college, in high school. The dude's a stud, kind of shorter, but fast, had one of the longest broad jumps in the entire class, while also being like one of the shortest guys. You also have the top of the line guys. You got guys like Treylon Burks, got Jameson Williams. Jameson Williams didn't run yesterday. Obviously, he's kind of dealing with his injury that he's supposedly had a schedule on. But there's all kinds of guys that you got to see. Chris Olave, you got to see Danny Gray, who's a burner, Jahan Dotson, David Bell. You pick Garrett Wilson. I mean, there's guys. It really just depends on what the teams need. And so when the Chargers and Rams, I'm curious to see what the Rams' perspective is, but from a Chargers perspective, I don't think, again, one of the decisions you mentioned before, like what do they do with Mike Williams? I am 99.97% sure that Mike Williams is going to be back in 2022 some way, shape, or form. My guess would be he's going to be franchise tagged. But if he's not, there is a direction you can go in that crop of receivers. If he is franchise tagged, you want to get someone that's going to could possibly be his replacement, but also play next to him. You got guys like that. But I think more than anything else, if you're the Chargers and probably the Rams too, like, you're wanting someone with just sheer speed. And I think that's what I noticed the most yesterday, was just how many of those guys there are and how often you can find them throughout the 7 rounds. It's not like you have to get one in round 1 or 2 or you're done. That's just not the case.
Yeah, exactly. And, they had, when the official times came out, only one Tyquan Thornton in the 4.2s, 4.28, but 7 guys in the sub 4.3s. Like, so speed is crazy. And, I've talked about a lot, I'm sure you guys have too, that I think at this point in this day and age, combine drills, specifically the 40 time, are not as critical in the draft process as maybe they used to be. I think teams have learned that tape is much more important. We've seen in years past where guys like Orlando Brown fell down draft boards because of his combine, and he's a phenomenal player. And guys like John Ross skyrocketed off draft boards because of his combine, and he can't play more than 2 games in a row. So I think teams have realized, but it still is, fun for the fans to see. And also it's eye-opening, I think, for GMs and scouts to say, okay, here's the track speed that we could use. And For the Rams, it'll be interesting because last year in the second round, I don't know if you remember this, but many Rams fans do because it was probably one of the most controversial picks they've had in a long time, taking Tutu Atwell because of his speed. But, at the 5'5", 160-pound range, like everyone expected, got hurt like 2 or 3 weeks into the season. We didn't see him at all. So do the Rams, assess that and kind of scrap that as a loss and go after another speedy receiver again? Or do they still have faith Tutu can be that type of role player and look for someone else? That'll be the question that we'll have a month and a half to really dive into for the Rams. But for the Chargers, in that first round, in 17, if Mike Williams is back, is there still a shot? I mean, you guys had Trevor Sickma on your show back when we were on Radio Row, and he still said, even if they bring Mike Williams, I still think they go receiver because you can then go tit for tat with the Chiefs when you have those kind of horses for Justin Herbert. What do you think about that?
I agree. There's a few. I think there are probably 3 receivers that I would be okay with the Chargers picking at 17. One would probably be the dream pick for me, which is Jameson Williams out of Alabama. The guy is just a freak. He's ahead of schedule with his torn ACL injury that he had, which used to be so much worse than it is now. Now you hear it all the time. People come back from it, no problem. But Treylon Burks and Garrett Wilson are probably the other 2. I have a hard time believing Treylon Burks is going to get out of the top 10. The wide receiver from Arkansas is just a freak. He's like 6'2". I think he ran a 4.5, and he could do it all. He has kind of a AJ Brown physique for folks who are trying to look for a kind of a comparison, but he's plenty fast. Again, 6'2", stocky frame, like him. Garrett Wilson, guy from Ohio State. You'll love him if you watch him. And then if it's other than that, personally, I don't want a receiver at 17. I think from there, there's a steep drop off for the next tier. Again, the next tier is very good, but 17 or even midway through the first round, I probably wouldn't touch a receiver other than those 3.
All right. So, yeah, Dan, you mentioned, a few guys, Jameson Williams, excuse me, that you like. One of the big names right now linked to the Chargers, not really necessarily by media, but by fans, Chris Olave. Like we mentioned, had that killer unofficial time. The official time still great at 4.39. Great career at Ohio State. You feel a little differently about him, though. Why is that?
Yeah, so Chris Olave, I think, got so much buzz and hype after he saw the unofficial 4. I think it was a 4.24 40, which is insanity. That's crazy fast. You saw a bunch of people saying, Olave at 17 or bust. I think he's a good receiver. I think he is consistently good. But for me, looking at the production that he has had across his entire tenure at Ohio State, he's never been their wide receiver 1. He's never eclipsed 1,000 yards. I think he's been at 800 twice. And I don't necessarily see him separating himself. And I see him benefiting from having another stud guy next to him, i.e. a Garrett Wilson. And when you watch him on tape, he's wide open, like 15 yards wide open on broken coverages, which you wonder why. That's not because he's breaking ankles, I promise you. Yeah. That's more of a coverage thing. Now, is he good? Absolutely. Would I take him on my team? Absolutely. But for the price that he's probably going to go, which is most likely going to be a mid to probably 15 to 25 is going to be his range of where I see him going. There are other positions that I think I would rather have and other players at those positions that rank higher for me on my kind of big board for the Chargers needs. Again, good player, but I think his draft stock rose way too high. And again, 4.39 isn't terrible at all, but 4.39 is not elite like we thought 4.24 was. And so for that reason, you can find 50 wide receivers in this class that ran from that caught 60 balls for 800 yards. And factually, that's what Chris Olave did.
Yeah, so you would be more in the camp of, hey, at 17, if, again, it's hard to talk at this point too much depth because we got to see what they do in free agency, but just seeing as the team constructed now, at 17, if the best tackles are off the board, we don't like the defense lineman, we're going receiver. I'd rather take A, B, or C over Olave, or would he be like your third option or second option?
I would go a different direction than wide receiver at that point. At 17, okay. if Williams and Burks isn't there. Wilson would probably be, Garrett Wilson's the only other one that I would probably be okay with taking. After that, there's so many guys that are great athletes. I mean, there's George Karlaftis, the defensive end. There's, I don't know, Devontae Wyatt, Jordan Davis, the two big Georgia guys on defensive line. You've got some stud corners. You got some pretty good linebackers that I would take, even on the Chargers, who have a pretty good linebacking core. Offensive linemen, clearly, I would take. There's a bunch of guys and a bunch of positions that the Chargers could use help with that I think they can get a premier talent higher than Olave would be.
So just because you've, I think, dove into the tape and can help people out here. So for those that don't know, what is it about Garrett Williams per se? Or Garrett Wilson, excuse me. We'll just go straight to Ohio State guys. And I mean, let's be honest, the best receiver on Ohio State was probably Jackson Smith and Jigba, if I'm saying that correctly, who will be coming out next year for the draft. Or is he a true freshman? Or he's not in the draft yet, obviously, but he might be the best one of that group. But what about it? Would you take Garrett Wilson over Chris Olave?
So the thing I like about Garrett Wilson is I think he is in my opinion, I think he's a better route runner. I think he's a much better wide receiver in terms of hands. I think he's a much better catcher with his hands versus his body. He does have a little bit of a thinner frame. I think he's like, I don't know, 5 pounds less than Chris Olave. But I mean, the guy is an absolute stud. I mean, he has a 36-inch vertical, ran a 4.38. Again, he's faster now than we see than Chris Olave.
100th of a second. Yeah.
Yep. And I mean, even just his last 3 games alone in college, he got over almost 400 yards and 27 catches. In terms of like his play style, he plays very fast. I think he could run the entire route tree. I think he's overall just a better receiver than Chris Olave. And look at his production. I mean, for Chris Olave, who had roughly, I think it was like 800 and something yards, Garrett Wilson, I want to say, had something like 70 receptions. I'm looking at my notes here. 70 receptions for over 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Like, I'll take that. 6 foot, 183, almost 10-inch hands. Garrett Wilson is a kind of a physical specimen. Again, a little thinner. I could see them putting on like 5-10 pounds. But to me, I think he's the better athlete than Chris Olave.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it's fair. And I think it's kind of at the point, and I'm not saying this to you, but it's almost like, pulling at strings to find inefficiencies. I think they're both really good. I
will say this, the one thing that, and Jake and I were talking about this on our show last night, was in my eyes, there's like a definitive top 3. You could argue, say top 5. But then after that, there's like a solid 10 to 20 guys who are like in that next tier of you're kind of splitting hairs. It depends on what you're wanting. It depends on what your flavor is that you're needing for your team. But everyone else is so close. And so like you can make a case for one to be over the other very easily for pretty much anyone else in this class.
Well, exactly. And I think that's what I was just going to say, is that why you wouldn't go necessarily if those big 3 that you like, and we didn't even mention Drake London because he didn't run yesterday. Who Drake London is my wide receiver 1 in this class. However, for the Chargers' sake, it really depends on what happens with Mike Williams, because they are very similar style receivers. So do they, and I don't think Drake London would be there at 17 anyway, personally, but that's a different story. So if you're 3 of, or I guess, was it 3 or 2 then? Garrett Wilson, Jameson Williams,
Traylon Burks.
And Traylon Burks, excuse me. Yeah. So those 3 are gone. Then it's like, okay, if you're not that high on Olave, there's so many guys in that 2nd and 3rd round range, the Christian Watkins, I know you've looked into a lot of these guys. So go into those a little bit about the 2nd tier guys that still give you that crazy speed, can add to what the Chargers need, because they need that burner. Everyone knows last year the main burner was Jalen Guyton. We don't even know if he'll be back, but either way, I think you can upgrade from where he was with these talented players in the 2nd or 3rd round. So go into some of those guys that you've kind of fallen in love with through tape, but also what they did at the combine yesterday.
Yeah, so looking at both the combine and as what we've seen throughout their careers, there's some of the burners that I think are going to be hot commodities come the NFL draft. Burner specifically, I would say a guy like Christian Watson, 6'4", so much taller than you normally would think a guy that's going that fast or that quickly. Great speed, has some special teams ability there too. He's kind of returned a few touchdowns on special teams.
4.36 was his 40 time, by the way.
4.36 at 6'4", like that's unheard of.
Insane.
you look at a guy like Cal Austin, I mentioned him before, track star, a guy like Danny Gray out of SMU, kind of smaller build. You see guys like Sky Moore, not necessarily as elite when it comes to speed, but just overall playmaker. He's kind of my like Debo Samuel archetype. He's not the same physical size as him, but his play style is just like him. But then if you're looking for someone who is just as smooth and as cool as the other side of the pillow, as Stuart Scott used to say, like Jahan Dotson out of Penn State, he is my favorite in terms of just pure pass catching ability. The guy is so smooth, has a DeAndre Hopkins vibe, in my opinion. A guy like Kyle Phillips. I mean, there's so many guys. Kyle Phillips at UCLA. He's going to be another one of those like Debo Samuel type do it all receivers that someone's going to get him. I can see him going to a team like the Patriots, and they're going to love him.
Don't say that.
Another fast guy. I mean, I literally can go on and on and on and on. There's a couple guys that I would probably say later on that I think someone are going to get a steal in. I don't necessarily think this is for the Chargers. David Bell, I'm high on him. He was kind of underwhelming at the combine. He did run a good 40. But he's just a producer. He has almost 3,000 yards in his career at Purdue and over 230 catches or something crazy. A couple other ones I'd probably say, look out for Khalil Shakir out of Boise State. He actually, speaking of the Rams, he kind of has like that Cooper Kupp style of play where the dude just gets open and he just makes plays. I like him a lot.
That's what you want. That's what you want.
I mean, the guy had almost 1,200 yards, 80 receptions, 77 receptions technically. Wan'Dale Robinson, another one of those gadget guys, super fast. Trey Turner, I really like as well out of Virginia Tech. One of my kind of sleepers. Someone's going to get him. And then maybe one other one I probably would say, there's so many. Jalen Tolbert, 6'1". I think he ran a 4. What did he run? I want to say he ran a 4.3. Sorry, he ran a 4.4. But 6'1", almost 200 pounds, 10-inch hands. I mean, he can catch anything. Out of Southern Alabama, again, smaller school. Yeah. But that's what the combine does. Like you get to see all of these guys who typically don't necessarily get as much notoriety or don't get as much TV time. One other one, Alec Pierce out of Cincy, I believe. Bigger, I think he's 6'4", ran really fast, volume production type receiver. He kind of has like that like Adam Thielen / Jordy Nelson vibe to me. He doesn't necessarily doesn't do anything like elite, but he might be well-rounded enough and very good at enough things to where like he might just be a damn good wide receiver.
Yeah, like a Keenan Allen kind of thing.
Exactly.
You're just good at what you do. I'm all, and I know you're the same way. I'm a tape guy. Like we see the combine results and the RAS scores that everyone starts comparing that, looks at athleticism or ability. And, I think David Bell is one specifically that had a really bad RAS score, if I'm not mistaken. But it's like if the dude produces in between the hash marks, in between the sidelines, like that's what I care about. Yeah, I use that as like a reference, those scores and those 40 times and the bench press. Like, cool. I think that's a good thing to like maybe add to the resume, but it's not the work experience, right? Like it's like when you're filling out a resume for a job and you get to fill out your work experience, you get to fill out your like skill sets, and then there's a little section of like extracurriculars. That's what the combine of the RAS would be. It's like, okay, I was in, Cub Scouts or whatever, or I was an Eagle Scout. Like, okay, cool. That's a fun little thing. But what did you do in work? What did you do in school? That's the tape. That's the important thing. And when people put too much stock into these RAS scores that I see all over Twitter and comparing to current players, I'm like, you're just doing a disservice because you should look at the guy's production.
Yeah, I mean, again, David Bell arguably was one of the most productive wide receivers in college. Consistently had 1,000 yards. I think he had 2 out of 3 years at 1,000 yards, but very well into the thousands. Ran a 4.6 240, and people want to poo-poo that. You know who else ran a 4.62? Cooper Kupp. He was the best wide receiver in the NFL. Keenan Allen ran a 4.59, I believe, so 0.03 of a second behind. Keenan Allen is always open. So you want to talk about their 40 times, which I get, but there are certain guys who don't even need to run 40 yards to get open. And he's one of those guys. So you want to use those numbers as a benchmark. You're right. But at the end of the day, they say ball don't lie, tape don't lie either. And for someone who's able to get that much production out of Purdue, who also had Rondale Moore a year ago, and he's able to do this with him. Shows you what kind of production he is, and shows you he's just an all-around football playing Jesse that we hear a lot of people talk about. Like, he's just a guy you want in your receiving core, and he makes you better. Now, for the Chargers specifically, they have Keenan Allen. So I don't necessarily know if they want to go more into that style of wide receiver, other than possibly getting that as like a handcuff replacement in case Keenan Allen gets hurt. But I don't see David Bell being available later in the rounds that I would probably get him at for the Chargers specifically. But for other teams, sign me up for David Bell, man. Like him a lot. Him and Jahan Dotson are just two of probably my favorite pure receiving players in this draft. Just pure hands, pure fluidity. Love them.
Yeah. Last receiver I want to talk about quickly before we touch on the tight ends. I talked about him last show too. So for those out there listening, sorry, we're going to repeat a little bit, but I got to talk a little about Kyle Phillips. You mentioned him. Great career at UCLA, really came on this final season as just you mentioned it, do it all, but just a guy that was always open. Like when the UCLA Bruins needed a play, had to have it, you knew Kyle Phillips was going to make it. Also, had a punt return that was just a filthy sick punt return. Ran, I believe, a 4.58 40. So, quicker than probably people gave him credit for. He was the offensive player of the week at the Shrine Bowl out in Vegas. So obviously doing it against his peers, his all-star too. In those mid rounds, again, I don't really think the Rams will probably go receiver again in the mid rounds. They have too much need on offensive line, which we'll talk about, on the next show, too much need at linebacker and corner and different positions. But the Chargers, if they bring back Mike Williams, if they decide to go corner or D tackle or somewhere interior in those first couple rounds, and they have someone sitting there like Kyle Phillips in the mid rounds, how do you like his fit with the Chargers, with Mike Williams, with Keenan Allen, with Josh Palmer?
Well, it's funny you mentioned Kyle Phillips, because I actually have him, and I was looking at him. I have it in my notes as kind of a better prospect coming out of college, a better Joe Reed, which the Chargers drafted Joe Reed to kind of be that same type. I mean, I would love Kyle Phillips to be that. He's like that yak rack specialist who just always is turning yards. I see him
never drops the ball, Chargers fans. I know that's a big thing. Drops. Yep. Kyle Phillips does not drop the football.
No, he's a special team specialist, which I think, as you know, Chargers value versatility and if you're going to make this roster, you have to be on special teams. A bit smaller, but a tough frame. And probably his best attribute is the ability to just separate. Not necessarily any particular way, but he just always is found open. And could I see the Chargers getting him? Absolutely. I don't necessarily know if the Chargers would get him for a specific purpose of like that sheer speed that they need. But if they're wanting someone who could just be like a multifaceted Swiss Army knife, Kyle Phillips, sign me up. Yes, please.
Yeah. Well, again, it comes down to fit for them at this point, because if they bring Mike Williams, they have their stars. They still do need that burner to open things up, and that's not necessarily Phillips, but I think he could have a very nice role with them. All right, Dan, last thing about tight ends. We got like 2 minutes, so we'll keep this short and sweet. Obviously, Chargers have Jared Cook's a free agent. Donald Parham, I believe, is a restricted free agent. So there's stuff they could do in free agency. A lot of people talked about David Njoku. I love them to go after OJ Howard. I talked about that on my show last week. I think that's a great guy, a veteran they could get for cheap that has a lot of talent. But looking at this tight end class, love Greg Dulcich, ran a 4.69 40. He's rising draft boards among the media. The NFL personnel has known how good this guy has been, and we've known at the LA Football Network, but we're seeing him rise. How do you like, again, minute, keep it short and sweet, but how do you like the Chargers going after a tight end in this draft? And do you like Greg Dulcich?
I do think I could see the Chargers going after a tight end, although they do have a pretty deep tight end group already. Like, I think they have, Trey McKitty, I think, is turning into be a very good kind of run blocking tight end. I think they want to kind of add to him. I think Donald Parham has a very bright future for tight end. I think they might need someone, Steven Anderson's in that group. I don't think Jared Cook is going to be back. I could see them going tight end. And Greg Dulcich, man, he's 6'4", almost 250 pounds, has a 34-inch vertical leap, and 4.69 for a tight end. Like, that's pretty darn good, and almost 10-inch hands. You're right. Not enough people talk about him because he's on the West Coast, because he plays on Pacific time. But once you start seeing him in front of the bright lights, in front of all the other teams, the casual fans in us might not necessarily know much about him, but you damn well know that those teams and scouts have been watching him for quite some time.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love Greg Dulcich. Dolly, as I like to call him. I hope he's back in LA here with the Chargers or the Rams. I don't think he'll last till the third round where the Rams had their first pick. I think he'll be in the second round. Could even sneak in the first round, depending how this draft process goes the next month. So
and to boot, last thing, Landon Zerline, I just found this out. Landon Zerline actually has him player comped to a one Trey McKitty. So there you go.
There you go. Which is a funny comp because Dulcich is a much better pass catcher and receiving type threat. I love Trey McKitty, but everyone knew McKitty was an inline. Yeah, everyone knew he was an inline blocker. So I don't really see that comp at all from Landon Zerline. We talked about him last episode actually, and my guest compared him to up in San Francisco, the great George Kittle, who was a 5th round pick and obviously came great. So we'll see. So Dan Wolkenstein, thanks so much for taking the time. You get a 1-word answer to end the show. Just came out today that the Cowboys look like they're moving on from Amari Cooper. I'm already going to take the Rams off the table. They got no money. They're not going after him. Should the Chargers pursue?
No.
Okay. I agree. We just talked about how deep this receiver class is. That would be silly to me to go after that. So that's all the time I got. This is the LAFB show, LA football show here on the Mightier 1090 ESPN radio, always on the LA Football Network. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at LAFB Network. I'm Ryan Dyrud, LAFB. Dan is at Chargers Homer. My man, thanks for the time. Appreciate you. Enjoy your weekend. All right.
Thank you, man. Thank you guys so much. Happy Friday. Let's go.